All right, next is the memory. So the first most important type of memory we need to know is the random access memory, or RAM. Any byte of memory can be accessed directly without touching any other byte given its address in memory. That's why it's called random access memory. It can randomly access any byte or any location given that you provide that location. It's the most common type of memory in computers and other devices. It's also known as the main memory. So when somebody refers to the main memory, you need to allocate memory or you need to use the memory. That's meant by the random access memory. The main memory, or the RAM, is temporary storage. That means that all data will be lost if we reboot the system or if we power down the PC or device. The second type of memory that we need to know about is read-only memory, ROM. The ROM chip is used mainly for BIOS and firmwares. Once you write data to it, it cannot be removed and can only be read after that. And even if you turn off the computer, turn it back on, the data will still be there. This is needed by most motherboards and hardware systems to boot up. ROM is known as non-volatile, whereas RAM is volatile because it loses its data. All right, now we want to talk about an important subject, which is addressing memory space. In the addressing memory space, as you can see in this diagram here, each data element has an address. Each byte of data has memory location that can be read or written to given its address. A byte is an 8-bit of data. A bit is either 0 or 1. And a single byte can hold a value from 0 to 255. Now, a byte can be signed, unsigned. All that details we can skip for now, and we can focus on it when the time is right in the future lecture. Memory addresses are of two types. They can be physical addresses, and the physical address, the direct address of the memory location, is restricted to system software like BIOS and operating system. Typically, it's only accessed via machine code through the operating system code itself. The second type is called virtual addressing. Virtual addresses are usually given to our programs by the system software like the operating system, so that your program needs memory and it asks the operating system, hey, give me some memory so I can execute my instructions or store my data. The address that the system gives to our programs is usually virtual address, unless we have some special programs, but I'm talking about in general. Programs will use virtual addresses because the operating system will hand you that virtual address. In this case, why is this useful? This is useful in many ways, some of which is that your program doesn't have to worry about whether this is RAM or disk, because if the operating system or the memory manager part of the operating system hands you the memory, if you run out of real RAM memory, then it can actually virtualize it and it can use the disk as a slower type of memory, but at least your application is going to continue to run, is not going to crash or stop running because of out of memory situation. Okay, so now we want to move on to storage. It's also known as the secondary storage. There's two types that we need to know of. The hard disk drives. These are slower but bigger in size and cheaper than RAM, and you can save the data on them even after you turn off your computer system. So that's the first type. The second type is now called flash or SSD, solid state drive. This one is more expensive than the hard disk drive, but it's faster and it's quieter too. Continuing on storage, we're gonna try to see how to access certain parts of the storage using code, either to read or write information. We will look into that in more detail when we get to a section about working with files and persisting data to disk later in the course.
Okay, so as a summary to this lecture, we discussed the memory and the main types, which are the RAM, the main memory, which we said is a temporary memory, and then we discussed the ROM, which is non-volatile and does not lose its data. Then we also discussed the difference between physical and virtual memory addressing. And then we touched base on storage, the two types that we care about, the hard disk drive and the flash, and how we can utilize that for our programs in the future. In the next lecture, we will talk about software and discuss the different types of software that we care about, mainly the operating system, the BIOS, and our programs. So see you then.